You are listening to Dove Valley Deep Divers with Erick Trickel
and Lance Sanderson.
Ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
On Overtime Media.
And it looks like we are live. We're going to let this stream breathe for just a few minutes and make sure we got green check marks across all platforms. Looks like we are good to go. So mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country, and welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me, as always, in this endeavor is my good friend and colleague. He is your Denver Broncos insider and Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. Erick, how you doing, man? It's been a week since we got to really kind of sit down and chat. I know you and I have been playing some Pokemon Go here lately, so it's been a lot of fun catching some Heatrans and having a whole bunch of fun with that. Got to talk with your wife Chelsea for a few minutes last night, so it's been kind of fun, you know. But other than that, what's going on, man? How you doing, my dude?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm really freaking tired, though. It's been a long week. Just stuff going on in personal life and, you know, with other stuff that's going on. Just very, very tired dealing with all that stuff. Excited to be here tonight. Excited to be talking about football, and excited to go out and play Pokemon Go later. Excited to play some Fall Guys a little bit later, maybe, and Warzone, Apex Legends, all these other games I've been getting into. It's been nice to get back into gaming a little bit. I haven't really played a video game in, 6-7 years. So it feels good to get back into that, something that's a little bit relaxing and all that stuff. And then, yeah, by the way, we got to get you in. We get you into a raid invite. They have megas in there now.
Yeah, I saw that the other day. The Mega Evolutions is actually a new thing on Pokemon Go, so I'm kind of intrigued just to see how that's going to actually work out. Lots of Mega Charizards, but this, guys, is not a Pokemon podcast. This is the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast where we talk about Denver Broncos football, but not to deal from that. Go ahead.
Have we ever told the story about what we originally talked about for the name of this podcast?
We actually posted it on our Twitter accounts when we first I can't
remember what it was, but
it was I choose you Broncos.
It was a cross between some Pokemon related and Broncos related. But anyways, guys, as he said, we're not really here to talk about Pokemon. I just thought that was kind of a little bit of a funny thing to say. And then Peter Middleton said, real quick, he says that he saw Nick popped in and say hi to you, Lance. So I do have one quick question about you. Is Nick as annoying in person as he is over the internet?
Completely, 100%. No, not really. He's actually really chill. It was fun to sit down and talk with him. We sat outside and had a local IPA from one of the local breweries here in Wyoming. It was really good. So it was good to catch up with him, actually get to shake his hand for the first time and get to kind of know him just a little bit better and just more or less talk about life. It wasn't really Broncos related. It wasn't football related for the most part. Even with what he does for a living, we didn't talk about that. It was just catching up, getting to know each other a little bit better. It was really fun to get to know Nick. So Nick, if you're listening, I miss you, buddy. Thanks for coming in and coming to meet the family. It was great to actually get a chance to do so. Now today, guys, on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast, we're talking about Demar Dotson getting some reps and stuff like that with the first team. It didn't sound like there was a whole lot going on there. Sounds like he got at least a series with the full first team offensive line. But the biggest thing that we have to take away from this is what Vic Fangio said following practice. I'm going to pull this quote up here for everybody to read it that's watching live. If you get a chance to catch this after the fact as a podcast, please do pay attention close. Zach Stevens from DNVR actually asked Vic Fangio about Demar Dotson and if he does have the opportunity to win the starting job. And Vic replied with this: he does, but it's up to Elijah to lose it too, speaking to Elijah Wilkinson. As long as Elijah is playing the way that we think he's capable of playing, he will be the right tackle. If he's struggling, then we have Demar to replace him. Now, this kind of goes against what you and I have really kind of thought with Demar Dotson and the signing there, because I really thought that Demar Dotson was being brought in to be the starter. And it sounds like the Broncos are going to kind of put him into a little bit of a competition, not really give the starting job to Elijah Wilkinson. But as of this point, it sounds like there's a long ways to go. Eric, have you heard anything else outside of that?
It's been widely reported that it basically was going to be Elijah Wilkinson's job to lose ever since Jawan James opted out. And my kind of hope is that Demar Dotson's able to show enough to beat him out, because we have seen nothing of Elijah Wilkinson actually being able to play tackle at even a decent level. Last year was abysmal. He allowed like 34 total pressures, 10 of them sacks. Like, it was just way too high. He was consistently beaten around the edge just by speed and athleticism. And it's fitting. That's his play style doesn't fit to that. He's a guard playing at tackle, and it's just nutters to me. I really don't think that he will hold on to the job much longer. I think once Demar Dotson really gets the offense down, really gets the playbook down, and really acclimates to being a mile high and the altitude and everything like that, I think he'll easily come in and replace them. And if he doesn't, I think it'll be just a few games in the season before they make that switch, because I don't see it with Elijah Wilkinson, and I never have.
No, I'm actually 100% in agreement with you. Yeah, 10 sacks last year is really the biggest number you need to focus on there. With all the grief that you get from the guy on the other side of the offensive line, we don't say his name on this podcast, but still, Elijah Wilkinson was absolutely abysmal on the right tackle. And as you said, just not athletic enough to keep up with the speed. He does well anchoring when he gets a bull rush in front of him, and that really kind of speaks to his ability as a guard, where you do need to anchor a lot more. But out on the edge, you have to be able to move. You have to be able to get your feet moving and cut guys off coming around the edge. Lengthen that arc out and make guys run past the quarterback. Elijah Wilkinson just wasn't athletic enough to be able to do so. Now, Demar Dotson plays a lot like that guy on the left side, and I mean, yeah, he does. I can't remember. I had the statistics actually pulled up here. Hold on, give me just 1 second here. Demar Dotson did give up 34 total pressures last year as compared to Garrett Bowles with 31, and also 5 sacks for Dotson as compared to 4 for Garrett Bowles. So a lot of similar play on that outside. Demar Dotson's also 34 years old. He's an 8-year starter. I think he's been to a Pro Bowl as well. Started on both sides of the offensive line. Can do a whole lot for this Broncos offense. I think probably, as you pointed out, the biggest thing with Demar Dotson right now is just trying to get acclimated not only to the playbook, but because he's 6'9", like 320 pounds. The guy is huge, and he's lived his entire life, well, his entire NFL playing career, in Tampa Bay, where you're at sea level. In Denver, you're a mile high. You've got to get acclimated. That is a very big task for a guy so big. Now, it's just. The craziest thing to me is that Vic Fangio pretty much anointed Elijah Wilkinson as a starter. Like, I don't understand where that's coming from.
Yeah, I don't either. As I said, man, it's just he's never done anything to really show and be that guy on the outside. At least Demar Dotson, at least he's been solid out there at tackle. I mean, sometimes he does get beaten around the edge a little bit with speed and athleticism. And I mean, we do have to worry about if he's getting. I mean, he is older, and we have to worry about if he's lost a step. Jason Peters is another guy that, I mean, so many Bronco fans wanted him, but his play started to decline, and he's older. I mean, he is older than Demar Dotson as well, and not as big, not playing at altitude, and he's getting thrust into going back to left tackle. So once you get older, you just lose a step. It just comes naturally. I mean, no one beats Father Time. Andrew Whitworth, he was a guy who was playing great there for a long time, even after he signed with the Rams, and then he started to show decline. And offensive tackle, that's one position where if you rely on your foot quickness or just getting out into your set quickly, the older you get, the harder that becomes, because you just lose that step. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think that he can do it. If not, I really hope that Elijah Wilkinson finally steps up and shows something. But again, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I don't understand it. The one thing that I will give Elijah Wilkinson is he has done very good in camp, according to multiple reports, in the running game. And that right side of the offensive line, with Cushenberry getting some reps as the starting center right now, Graham Glasgow obviously at right guard, and with Elijah Wilkinson playing the right tackle position, they're blowing some people away on the right side of that offensive line, opening up some really nice running holes for Melvin Gordon, who has missed at least some time in the last couple of practices, but especially for Phillip Lindsay and for Royce Freeman. Now, Eric, I'm going to kind of test your knowledge here just a little bit. What do you think of Demar Dotson as a run blocker? Can he possibly be a guy that's a little bit better than Elijah Wilkinson, or are we going backwards in that aspect?
We're going nowhere with it. Elijah Wilkinson wasn't that great of a run blocker last year either. Denver had some of their worst runs rushing off that right side because he couldn't hold up. And I saw somebody in the chat real quick talk about rotating them. And rotating guys on the offensive line, to me, is just a no-no. I'm slowly one of the guys that I play Warzone and stuff with. He's an offensive line coach, And he and we actually just talked about this when we were playing last night. And he says, and it's something that I knew, but it was nice to hear it from a coach, is your offensive line, you rely so much on the chemistry and knowing the guy next to you and what they do and how they do it. And rotating, you just ruin that. Every time you start to get chemistry down, bam, the end of series, next series, another guy's coming out. You got to kind of get that back down, get the timing down. It's like quarterbacks and receivers. You got to have that timing down to hit your receiver. You got to have the timing down as blockers as well. And when you rotate, timing becomes different. And then putting that pressure on Graham Glasgow, who he's got to not necessarily step up, but he's got to rise to the occasion on the interior offensive line, because that is where Drew Lock struggles so much more. I'm just not a fan of rotating it, and it's just not the thing that you do. But anyways, back to the run blocking again. Elijah Wilkinson, he wasn't great there last year.
No.
Demar Dotson, he's not great there either. Sometimes he can do well, but they're gonna, if they want to open up running lanes on that right side, they really need Nick Van Nett to step up and help execute double teams out there, or just get lucky, I guess, from the right tackle being able to sustain their block, because that's the biggest issue with both of them, is they don't sustain their blocks long enough against the run.
That's true.
In the run game.
Well, that's true. And just to kind of elaborate on a point that you were trying to get, it's not only just the timing and everything, it's the big communication. Think about it like, so offensive line checks, you have ace, deuce, and tray. So that's the ace would be your center check to your guard, deuce would be the guard to the tackle, and tray would be your tackle to the tight end. So that communication from ace, deuce, tray to Graham Glasgow between Elijah Wilkinson and then Demar Dotson on the outside, if they were to rotate that, that's a big time break in communication if you're not used to hearing those line checks at the same time. That's why I'm very confused as to what's going to happen here moving forward. It seems like Demar Dotson obviously is being brought up slowly with the Broncos right now, obviously getting him acclimated and getting him used to the playbook and stuff like that. But are we potentially going to see this kind of move forward? He got one series with the starters today in team drill per Ryan Konigsberg of DNVR. On the DNVR podcast, he actually talked about that just a little bit. It looked marginally better, but not great. Now, are we going to see Demar Dotson moving forward a little bit more as, like, now we're going to get 2 or 3 series in the next day or two? Is he going to really work into pushing Elijah Wilkinson for the starting role, or are we going to be stuck with Elijah Wilkinson at right tackle with Demar Dotson being the guy as like here's the emergency. We need him to fill in as like a swing tackle because he can't play on the left side. Are we talking like an injury replacement, or is Demar Dotson potentially going to win this job?
It's very much a battle right now. I think they are leaning towards Elijah Wilkinson just because he's been with the team. He has that experience. And, he's been working on the playbook a lot longer than Demar Dotson has. He should have it down by now. So that's one thing, is I think they're leaning that way, but it's still a battle up in the air. And I think we'll continue to see Demar Dotson get maybe not a large amount of reps with the first team unless he starts really playing well and outperforming Elijah Wilkinson.
Fine.
So
okay
that's kind of how I see it right
Erick?
now. It's Elijah Wilkinson's job. With what Big Fangio said, I think is very true. It's Elijah Wilkinson's job to lose, which means that if he doesn't step it up and continue playing better than Demar Dotson, he's going to continue to get more reps with the first team, and even more reps, and then even more reps, eventually taking over the job. But we're going to see him get a few more reps in the meantime, just kind of help getting him acclimated and letting him see what he can do with the first team, because the offensive tackles, primarily on that right side against Von Miller, have not done well so far in training camp. They've been not quite a turnstile, but pretty close to it. So that's something that it's just a matter of who's going to go out there, who's going to win it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard when you're going against Von Miller. And honestly, Malik Reed has really shown a lot of strides in year 2 coming in. He's a lot more confident in his first step. Actually, he's getting a handful of pressures every single day, has a handful of sacks, is not really taking the quarterback to the ground because you don't do that in training camp or practice, period. But still getting a lot of what would be sacks against the right tackles for the Broncos, and also against Garrett Bowles as well, playing against the first and second string offensive line too. So he's really having a good camp. But it's really easy to kind of understand that Von Miller might be the best pure pass rusher in the NFL right now. Obviously, guys are going to struggle there. But one thing I kind of want to bring into this just quickly before we hit this super chat from Mundungus is the pressure along the interior of the defensive line as well. Just the entire pass pressure. The Broncos' defensive line is so stacked with pass rush potential right now. Jarrell Casey seems to be a monster. Is that going to be another issue for the Broncos in pass protection this year? Or is that just because the Broncos are so good defensively?
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Oh, that's actually a very interesting question. I think that it's going to be more so that because their defensive line is so good. Jarrell Casey, he's a guy that he does such a great job getting after the quarterback on the inside. It's where he made his money.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a solid run defender, but it's definitely that pass rush ability. Shelby Harris, he's not the best of run defenders. He's a solid guy getting after the quarterback. He's known for batting out passes. And, I mean, guys, when you bat down passes real quick, that means that you lost your pass rush rep. So just remember that. He's good at batting passes because he's not winning his pass rushes. Yeah. But that's going to be that. I mean, so he's sitting there. He's providing some solid pass rush ability. Then you've got Draymond Jones, who is a pass rusher first. Then you've got McTelvin Ajim, who is a pass rusher first. Yeah. Then you have DeMarcus Walker and Christian Covington. They're battling out for that number 6 spot. Both of them are pass rushers first. DeMarcus Walker is terrible against the run, and Christian Covington's just not that good against the run either. So the run defense comes from Mike Purcell, and we don't see him in passing situations all that often, obviously. So I think it's just they have so much talent and potential on this defensive line, and they're rotating centers and reps right now.
Yeah,
in this, and I think that. I mean, I talked about that chemistry. I think that's causing them a little bit of problems. Lloyd Cushenberry, he's still picking things up. Austin Schlottman, he's having a lot of struggles. Patrick Morris, he's dealing with a lot of issues right now. So it's just a combination of just that rotating on that offensive line, on that interior, and just the talent they have on the defensive side.
Yeah, well, of course, the talent on the defensive line right now for the Broncos is absolutely spectacular. Obviously, got Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, Jarrell Casey as well, and all the other guys that you just mentioned. Like that pass rush is going to be so ferocious. But again, the rotation sounds like Lloyd Cushenberry has taken reins of that starting center position. He's been the starter out the last 2 practices and has played primarily with the ones the entire time. Austin Schlottman, it seems to be the second string center with Patrick Morris. Might be on the outside looking in here. Like, really, no, he might be on the outside.
Austin Schlottman and Patrick Morris will make this roster, and the biggest reason for that is because they can play guard too.
No, that's a fair point, and it sounds like Patrick Morris is. Well, there you go. Peter Middleton asking if Patrick Morris on the way out. He actually has looked a lot better playing guard, and that's one thing that I have heard is that he struggles with getting his hands back up after snapping the football, especially in the running game. Gets beat a lot on twists and stunts like that. He's going to be really primarily sliding out of that guard position. So
the biggest thing with Morris is he is Mike Munchak's pet project right now.
Yes.
He has been for a while, even going back to when Mike Munchak was with the Steelers. He is his pet project right now. I think that this year he'll make it. I think next year will be the year that he really has to step up and show that he belongs in the NFL. Otherwise, he won't make it at that point.
Yeah. All right, so let me grab this from Mundungus, and we'll get to some quick matters of business really fast. Mundungus jumping in on Super Chat with a couple of very colorful hashtags. Hashtag eyebrow opt-out, speaking of that right tackle position with Juwan James. Nair blooper as well, campfire safety video. Dude, you and Mark, I swear, you and the levity and stuff like that, the jokes, it's funny, but, man, come on. No, I actually like those ones. Those ones were pretty funny. But anyways, matters of business, guys. You guys are watching the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You guys can follow me at Sanderson MHH on Twitter, and for Eric at Erick Trickel. Also, while you're at it, follow at DVDD_pod. It's the easiest way to keep in touch with what's going on with the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Follow at Mile High Huddle for instant news and analysis, breaking news, film articles, opinion articles, stuff like the making AFC West Broncos fans angry in the ranking the AFC West piece that I have going on right now. If you need anything Broncos related or podcast related, you'll find it at at Mile High Huddle. Excuse me. Also, want to draw your attention lightly over to huddleuppod.com. That's the merch tent. That's where you guys can get your hats, get your T-shirts. There's a face mask, coffee cup, hoodies. The Let 'Em Hate T-shirt right now, very hot seller. The one that Zach's web design actually helped out and put it's a Drew Lock Let 'Em Hate T-shirt with the Mile High Huddle logo on it. Really cool stuff there, guys. If you have an opportunity to do so, please head on over. It's a great way to support the show. But the easiest things you can do to support the show in and of itself is these 3 things right here. Subscribe wherever you're watching this, wherever you're listening to this, on YouTube specifically. Subscribe, like every video you guys see, and if you love it, share it. And now also, I want to bring some attention here to the Mile High Huddle Facebook page. the supporters group. And this is something that is relatively new on Facebook. You got Pobby over there, Steve, Jerry Holland, Chris Hernandez, who just jumped on the podcast, is the Super Chat Superstar segment that the Huddle Up Show is doing every Wednesday. This is a great way, guys. It's go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. You'll see a little blue button that says support. Click that, and you're automatically in. It's, again, a great way to support the show, guys. All right. Now, another quick thing that I really wanted to get your opinion on here, and this was something that immediately as soon as I got the notification, I texted you and Nick and Carl in our group chat and said immediately that it was an overpayment. And we're talking about the Arizona Cardinals safety Budda Baker and receiving the highest paid safety contract in NFL history. 4 years, $59 million, which is $14.75 million on an average per year basis, with $33.1 million guaranteed at signing. Now, this is big news, especially with what the Broncos have potentially coming up with their safety, Justin Simmons, who is playing on the franchise tag this year, didn't come to a long-term agreement. Now, Eric, before I break this down a little bit, I want your immediate reaction when you saw that Budda Baker got signed to the highest paid safety contract in NFL history.
I laughed. Then I laughed some more. Then I went to the bathroom because I was at my day job, and I had to wipe my eyes because I was laughing so hard I was crying. Seriously, though, it's just thing of that Denver, I mean, not to get so much in them not getting the contract done with Justin Simmons. I have a video up on that covers a lot of the stuff about why it didn't happen. And there's a lot to it, including a big reason why is what's going on in the world, guys, unfortunately. And then another big part was that the Broncos they don't have that much money. They have their lack of owner just is creating some financial issues for them. So they just didn't have that much money to give them the guaranteed money that they want, because then that has to go into escrow and blah, 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 blah. Whole bunch of stuff that I had explained to me that totally went in one ear and out the other. But anyways, that was a big thing of it. And so I saw that, I'm like, okay, now Denver, they're going to want to get the deal done this next offseason after this. I mean, after probably another franchise tag being placed on him. And it's just his Justin Simmons price just went up. I mean, it's as simple as that. We saw this happen a few years ago at quarterback. We saw a guy who's in that second, third. I mean, in the case of Derek Carr, I'd say he's more like in that seventh tier of quarterbacks, just to trigger you a little bit, Lance. And then all these other quarterbacks that are undoubtedly better than him got paid. And then we started seeing $30 million a year. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers.
Dak Prescott's on like a $35 million franchise tag. Patrick Mahomes just got $50 million a year.
We saw all these other quarterbacks get much more than that. So it was a market-setting deal that Budda Baker got. Basically, the biggest thing is, I mean, he's that tier 2, tier 3 player that became the highest paid player. So that now sets the floor for these guys who are much better than him, much higher than that. I mean, we're looking at probably Justin Simmons looking at about, I don't know, at least $15.5 million on an average per year basis. I would think at least based off of that. Then Jamal Adams is also up for a contract. Anthony Harris is also up for a contract extension. And there's another big-time safety that's going to be up for a contract extension after this year. So
there's two actually. You got Derwin James that's coming up on a contract extension
that's right.
as well, and Minkah Fitzpatrick, who just had one of the best seasons as a free safety we've seen in a long time. That guy's a crazy ball hawk. These guys are about to get crazy amounts of money. Now, go ahead, Eric.
And so, with all these guys coming up, I mean, we just saw what Budda Baker got. That's going to be that. I mean, the floor for these guys is going to be at least $500,000 more than that, at least. So it's a market-setting deal. I mean, we're going to change the market. Just gone way up for Justin Simmons. Denver better be ready to pay up, because that's going to be what it comes down to. Is that Denver's going to have to pay up. Otherwise, they're going to just franchise tag him and hope that they get him another one. And then there's another issue that comes up that I don't think the video is published yet, but I did do a video about it. Actually, no, I did. It's about salary cap implications for 2021. And Buona Beast actually kind of has a little thing about here. That's why I want to talk about this. Does this toss Jackson out? And typically teams, they budget a X amount per the position. And with what Kareem Jackson is getting paid right now and how easy it is to get out of his deal after this year, if they want to pay Justin Simmons, that might mean the end of Kareem Jackson in Denver after this year. Otherwise, they're looking at to extend him or restructure his deal and lower his cap hit. That's basically the only two options they have. Otherwise, it's just Justin Simmons on a franchise tag for the next 2 years, and then he's gone.
Yeah, I just want to quickly just ask you this one question here. Is there I think it's a team option on Kareem Jackson's? I know that the first 2 years of the deal were pretty well guaranteed. It's a 3-year, $33 million deal, so he's making $11 million on an average per year basis. I thought that there was a team option on that, so that would actually be the easy way out. I know that after 2020, he doesn't have any guaranteed money left. I do know that for a fact.
Yeah, that is true.
Now, I want to kind of just break this down just a little bit, and I think you're kind of undershooting Justin Simmons' value, especially as a in pass coverage, just because based on what we saw with Budda Baker last year, and I'm not going to break down the run game aspect of this, because Budda Baker is a heat-seeking missile. He hits like a freight train. Absolutely amazing athlete, and I mean he can cover sideline to sideline and run with pretty much anybody. Now, as a run defender, this is where Budda Baker makes his hay. However, he is also tasked in coverage a lot. In fact, he played 607 coverage snaps last year, and that was the 5th most of any safety in the NFL. So let's not pretend that Budda Baker isn't tasked to be in coverage, but let's bring out the attention that Budda Baker is terrible as a coverage safety. He is absolutely awful. So just to break this down a little bit for you, on 607 coverage snaps, he allowed 36 catches on 47 targets. That's a 76% completion percentage. He also allowed the 5th most catches of any safety in the NFL with 36. For 400 yards, 205 of those yards came after the catch and 2 touchdowns. And the biggest thing here is he had 0 interceptions. In fact, he has 0 career interceptions. Let's just bring this back really fast. We'll stop right there and go to Justin Simmons on the Broncos side of things here. He played 8 less snaps, so 599 total coverage snaps, the 9th most of any safety in the NFL last year. He only allowed 25 catches on the same number of targets as Budda Baker, 47 targets. That's a 53% completion percentage. For 239 yards, 85 of those yards came after the catch for 0 touchdowns, and also had 4 interceptions, 11 in his career. It's very easy to see, just on a basic statistical basis, that Justin Simmons is by far the better coverage safety. And what do you want out of your safety players in this passing league? You want them to be able to play in pass coverage. And Budda Baker just simply can't do it. Now, Eric, I want you to kind of rebut that before we go into some more advanced analytics per Pro Football Focus really fast.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
So, one thing is, you mentioned that I was kind of undervaluing Simmons a little bit. And I'm assuming that you mentioned, or talking about the floor that I mentioned, like 15.5.
Yeah, I think he's gonna get 16 easy.
So I think that what I was saying is I think that's the floor for what he will settle for.
Right.
I think that he can definitely ask. I have no doubt he'll ask for more. He'll probably ask for $17 million on average per year basis.
Right.
And then try to work their way towards the middle a little bit. And the biggest thing is, like, at quarterback, you see big jumps from when after the market set to the next one. Especially we saw that with Erick Carr. You see big jumps after that. Safety and other positions, not as much. So I don't think we're going to see a huge jump from Budda Baker to the next paid one, unless Justin Simmons goes out there and just completely tears it up. Pushes for the interception season record or something like that. Like, outside of that, I wouldn't expect it to actually happen, but definitely plausible. But everything he said just hit the nail on the head. Budda Baker, he's a good run defender. He's not that great in coverage. Justin Simmons, he's much better in coverage, but Justin Simmons is the much better overall player. While he's not as good as he is in against the run as he is in coverage, he is still rather good against the run. He does a great job of reading and sorting through the trash and getting to where he needs to be. He really is that. He's a true safety. He is that last line of defense when it comes to run defense, and he puts himself in the position to do just that. And then in coverage, he does such a good job of reading the quarterback and putting himself in just the right position. Early last year was a little bit rough. We did see him make some mistakes, but I think he was still just kind of settling down into Vic Fangio's defense. So really going to be interesting to see. And I'm still mind boggled about the deal that Budda Baker got, I mean, Kevin Byard and Eddie Jackson, no doubt in my mind, they're on a whole different level than Budda Baker, and he got paid more than them. I mean, and I know the whole thing that there's inflation and contracts and players like that always end up getting more. Players are getting more and more. Salary cap goes up and everything. But I mean, this to me, more so from Arizona, is reeks of desperation. They are a team that they are really trying to bounce back and become something decent again. And they had to pay Budda Baker. He is a key part in that defense when it comes against the run. But I mean, 2-3 years from now, I think that they'll end up regretting this contract for Budda Baker.
Yeah, they really will. And just to kind of continue on here, first off, I totally agree with that. This is an atrocity of a contract. And as you said earlier, it's the Derek Carr of contracts for the safety position, like a middle-tier guy. And just to kind of give you a little bit more perspective as to far as like what Budda Baker looks like in coverage. Just last year alone, Budda Baker allowed a 115.6 passer rating when targeted in coverage. That was the 44th worst of any safety that had at least 400 plus coverage snaps. 44th worst. That's terrible. As compared to Justin Simmons at a 32.1 passer rating when targeted in coverage. That was the second best in all of the NFL. Now let's go into snaps per reception really fast. Budda Baker, 16.9 snaps per reception, 41st among safeties with 400-plus coverage snaps. Justin Simmons had 24 snaps per reception. That was 31st best amongst safeties with 400-plus coverage snaps. Budda Baker allowed 0.66 yards per snap, the 5th highest in the NFL. At the safety position. Justin Simmons, 0.40. That was 28th lowest. So we're like, it's very, very mind-boggling. And Justin Simmons is also he is very good in the running game. And if you want to go into the PFF grades, I have those here for you as well. Budda Baker, 71.4 overall, as compared, and that was, I think, 34th on per Pro Football Focus of all safeties. Justin Simmons, 90.7, the number one rated safety in the NFL last year. Budda Baker, for as good as he is in the running game, 81.4 run defense grade per Pro Football Focus. Justin Simmons, 86.1, higher than Budda Baker. As far as Budda Baker as a tackler, he's a great hitter. He also misses a lot of tackles. 82.9 tackling grade. Justin Simmons doesn't miss very many tackles, as very clearly based on his yards after the catch. 85 yards after the catch total on 25 total receptions. 90.2 tackling grade per Pro Football Focus, higher than Budda Baker. And then you want to get into just the pass defense, which we already pretty much broke it down for you and laid out why Justin Simmons is much better than Budda Baker on an all-around level. Justin Simmons, 91.1 pass defense grade, 3rd highest in the NFL. Budda Baker, 64.8. I rest my case, guys. I don't know what else I need to do to explain to you. Budda Baker got so drastically overpaid that Justin Simmons is about to make amazing money. He's going to be, like I said, he'll get at least $16 million, at least. And the only thing that's going to hang up with that is what's going on in the world right now and the fact that the salary cap is going to drop next year. That is the only saving grace for the Broncos, is they're not going to be able to afford to pay him. But somebody else is going to.
I mean, not just that next year. I mean, they're looking at the salary cap going down over the next few years. Mm-hmm. And Brian Weatherax is right. I mean, Budda Baker got overpaid. That's something that Juwan James can even agree with, and Juwan James got overpaid. Now, moving on a little bit, I've been following the conversation going on in the chat, and earlier on we got a bunch of questions about Mark Barron, and I didn't want to talk about it too much because I know that Chad and Zach, they really talked about it last night. I mean, at length. I tuned in and watched a little bit of that. Just our quick thoughts on it. I mean, at least my quick thoughts on it is he's terrible. He's managed to stick around in the NFL because he does whatever coaches ask him to do. And time again, NFL teams have shown that they will take the lesser talented player as long as they're willing to do whatever is asked to him. He gets this misconception, he gets mislabeled as a hybrid. And James Campbell actually tweeted this out in our group chat. James, he said that if he didn't wear a defensive back's number, nobody would call him a hybrid anymore. Yep. And that is exactly right, because he's not. He was one of the worst coverage linebackers last year and has been one of the worst coverage linebackers for multiple years. When he came into the NFL, it was as a safety. He was moved to linebacker because of how terrible he was in coverage. The team that moved him at least felt that, hey, maybe moving him inside to linebacker will be able to cover up some of his deficiencies that happen in coverage from playing the safety position, and he actually got worse. He hits hard. That's great. But, I mean, there's a lot more to playing the NFL game than hitting hard. He gets lost multiple times. I mean, I talked to multiple people who cover the Steelers, whom he was with last year. I've talked to people who cover the Rams, who he spent quite a while with. And all of them said is, like, he hits hard. That was the only positive all of them had. He hits hard. That isn't that great of a positive, guys. Like, hitting hard in today's game, I mean, with how the rules have changed and everything, you're opening yourself up for a lot of flags. You have to be very careful. I don't get it with Mark Barron. I mean, he hasn't signed yet. Maybe he won't. I don't see how. I think there's better options out there. I saw somebody else ask about potential safeties that could. I would take a look at Tony Jefferson. I would take a look at Clayton Geathers.
Yeah, there you go. Clayton Geathers. Yep.
Whatever his name is. I can't think of his name at the moment. He's been with the Colts a little bit. I would look at either one of them before bringing in Mark Barron, because both of them, they can at least cover tight ends. They can play in coverage. It's not that hard. I mean, Denver, they allowed almost 1,000 yards to tight ends alone last year.
Yep.
They were the worst team when covering tight ends last year, or second worst team. One of the two. I can't remember which one. It was like second or the worst or second to worst. Whatever it is. Just say no to Mark Barron, man. I don't get it. He's not better than Josie Jewell in coverage.
No,
I mean, and I know last week you really ripped on Josie Jewell about it. But, yeah, he's not. I mean, the issues that Josie Jewell has in coverage that you laid out, Mark Barron has even more severely.
Yeah, it's so frustrating to me because, and we actually talked about this a little bit when news broke that Mark Barron was in Denver and was visiting with the team. They were doing a test and everything to make sure that he could actually be signed and whatnot. And I actually said immediately, I was like, I would rather have Darren Lee. And I understand there's a lot of injury issues there and kind of misuse issues as well. But that's a highly athletic kind of a guy that really Vic Fangio, and this is the one thing that I will say, is Vic Fangio is at least very good with linebackers and getting the most out of them, linebackers and safeties especially. But, I mean, look at what Justin Simmons did last year. But still, Vic Fangio might be able to bring back Mark Barron, but I would rather have the high-end athleticism of Darren Lee in this complex coverage scheme, and also the ability, because Darren Lee's not bad as a run defender either. Exactly, Darian coming in here, I would still want Darren Lee. I would rather have Darren Lee immediately right now on this roster than Mark Barron. I would rather have Nigel Bradham on this roster than Mark Barron as well.
And on your point about Darren Lee, guess who was the main team interested in him from the New York Jets before the Chiefs traded him? And the Chiefs only got the trade done because Adam Gase won't trade to the Denver Broncos. They tried trading for Darren Lee over a year ago.
Yep.
They wanted,
I remember that.
What changed now?
Like,
I'm kind of curious about that. What changed with it? I mean, he was misused in Kansas City, so I mean, I don't think that can be it. And then Casey Martin came in. I just want to address this real quick. He said they blew it not signing Corey Littleton in the offseason. Denver had interest. His price just got too high, and I can't blame them for that. I mean, this is a guy who we haven't seen him outside of the Wade Phillips scheme, and the Wade Phillips scheme is actually very easy for linebackers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Vic Fangio's defense is a lot more complicated for linebackers, which is another reason why you don't sign Mark Barron.
Yes, absolutely. And really, the biggest reason why Wade Phillips' defense is so easy for linebackers, it really even not really necessarily for cornerbacks, but really easy across the board for the most part. It's all man coverage, straight man-to-man coverage across the board. Corey Littleton's a great man coverage linebacker. He obviously fits in very well with what Wade Phillips wants to do. Can he move backwards, moving away from the football, and then break into zone and cover that way? He's not had a whole lot of success doing that. Neither is Mark Barron. Darren Lee at least has. He's a fairly decent coverage linebacker there. Now, I want to grab this super chat really fast from Mr. Boggins just because we are talking about this. Do you think Fangio will find his premier inside linebacker this next offseason? He's always had one. Or do you think Sternad will be that? Honestly, I'm not sure about Justin Sternad. I do like the coverage ability. I like the athleticism there. I really like his length. He's very super long, good tackler as well. Moves very, very well sideline to sideline, just not overly athletic, doesn't have very good closing speed. So I really want to see the Broncos move in a kind of a different direction. Also, Justin Strnad's small. He's not going to fit very well in the run fits that Vic Fangio needs his linebackers to be able to do. So it's going to be interesting to see where this kind of lines up. But, man, it's very frustrating. This whole thing is just very frustrating. With Justin Strnad going out with that wrist injury, it's so hard to kind of project what's going to happen this year, let alone next year. And now there was a question earlier about Dylan Moses. Eric, I'll let you break down the first part, but then let's just talk about some guys in the draft coming up this year.
So Justin Strnad is Vic Fangio's Navarro Bowman, Danny Trevathan. That's what they want him to be in this team. But they still need that Roquan Smith or that I can't believe I forgot his name now. Patrick Willis. God, I can't believe I forgot his name. He's one of my favorite players of all time that hasn't been on the Broncos. They still need that guy. They hope Alexander Johnson becomes that guy. And with what we've seen from last year, sky's the limit for him. I really hope he takes that next step with his development. And then before we get to talking about the 2021 draft and Dylan Moses and all this stuff like that, we have a bunch of super chats here that we want to get into. Terry Rendell comes in with the $5 from Canada, not California, saying hashtag state of being, hashtag Broncos world. Thank you, Terry, man. So glad you can join us every single night. It's always fun to just interact with you and, follow the conversation that you have in the chat and everything. Chris Hernandez comes in with the $4.99 donation saying, hope everyone is doing well and have a great weekend. Can't stay because hashtag family movie night. Make sure to click those little thumbs up. Definitely. Yes. Make sure you guys are liking the video and everything. And Chris, I hope you have a great weekend too, you and your family and everything like that. And hope you're watching a good movie. I'm kind of curious what movie it is. Make sure it's a good one and enjoy that family time, man.
Yeah, hit us up on Twitter too. Let us know what you're doing. And
then ZW Designs with a $9.99 donation. Thank you, ZW. Man, that shirt is awesome. I can't wait till I get a little bit extra cash to get one myself, man. Awesome design shirt, man. He says, Eric, Duke brought this up earlier this week. Would Vanette work at inside linebacker? I understand he's a tight end, but he does have blocking techniques. That's actually kind of interesting. I've had a couple conversations, and with the coaches I know and everything like that. Luke Poglace has been part of it. The other guy that we've been playing games with, who's a coach alongside Luke a while ago. I've actually talked about this, about how at the school they did coach at together, they often experimented with their tight ends at linebackers because what's required of them is often pretty similar. So it's definitely a very interesting concept to think about. But I think once you get to the NFL, I think it's just a little bit too late. I think with Nick Bennett, he's kind of set into his ways as a tight end, that it'll be very hard to break some of the habits that he has that would need to be broken in order for him to play the linebacker position. Definitely an interesting thought, though, and one that always leads to great conversations. And then Pobby comes in and says, thank you guys for all you do. I look forward to the podcast every evening. Love MHH family. Go Broncos. Thank you, Pobby, for the donation. We're glad you can join us, and we're glad that you join us every single week and all the shows. You're always such a great part. You are a great part of the community, so thank you for that.
Yeah, raining down from Mount Rushmore every single day. Pobby, it's good to see you back on DVDD as well. Haven't seen you guys in a while, so we appreciate your support. We really do. Let's see here. See if we can't. Oh, here you go. This is your guy here, Miller 707 champ. Denver should have drafted Akeem Davis-Gaither. They had the opportunity to do it too multiple times, and they passed up. I really thought they should have taken it. Wait, he was drafted in the 4th round too. The Broncos could have got him over Albert Okwuegbunam as well, so they could have got Akeem Davis-Gaither there.
Isn't he set to miss the year? I thought he had a setback with the foot injury.
That's hindsight, though. That's hindsight. I'd still take Akeem Davis-Gaither.
Well, the setback with his foot injury happened before the draft. It's why he fell.
That's true. That is very true. James coming in here. I
love Akeem Davis-Gaither.
Yeah, James coming in here. I would have preferred Nigel Bradham on a 1-year deal and Darren Lee on a 2-year deal. The one thing that I will say about Nigel Bradham here is that he's always had kind of ceremonious exits. Let's just say that he doesn't necessarily fit very well. So it's kind of an interesting deal as far as what he's going to fit into this Broncos locker room. So, I mean, he obviously fell out of favor in Philadelphia, fell out of favor after just a short stint in New Orleans as well. That's why he's on the street. He's not a very well likable guy from what I understand. So Darren Lee, though, on a 2-year deal, sign me up, especially if it's cheap. If it's, $2-3 million a year, why not? And I bet you he would probably sign that just to get onto an active roster, and he would succeed so well in this coverage scheme.
Possibly.
Speaking of which,
wouldn't say he would for sure. He has a trait.
Yes, he does have the traits. Speaking of that, we'll actually break this down just a little bit because I have we've been talking about doing coverage breakdowns for you guys for a little while, but I really want to break down the Broncos cover for really just a quarters defense for you and kind of explain. We might do that here in just a few minutes. I want to run through this and see if we can't find a couple of more questions.
I actually have one here that Darian P says, Buana, they're going to screw up Holland's development by switching him every offseason. They're not switching him. Ever since they drafted him, even when he was at Oregon, Justin Hollins was learning to play off ball and edge. He was playing that hybrid role.
Yep.
And that's what they had. That's what they've been having him work with. Now all they're doing is, instead of splitting his attention, they just have him solely focusing on off ball, which from a conversation I had, they were looking at doing anyways because he's got the edge stuff down. I mean, it's just a matter of improvement there, improving his technique and stuff like that. But he's got to learn a lot to be off ball. So it's not that they're not switching him. He's still playing the same kind of role he is, because he was going to be the edge rusher who would drop back into coverage, very similar to Leonard Floyd with the Chicago Bears. That's what they wanted him to be when they drafted him. That's what they're working on him to be now. But again, it's just they now have him strictly working off ball at practice, while in his own time and outside of practice, he's still working on improving at the edge.
Yeah, the one thing that, and I broke down Justin Hollins a couple of years ago when we were still with 24/7 Sports at MileHighHuddle.com, breaking down Justin Hollins and his film coming out of college after the Broncos drafted him. The one thing about him is he's so freakishly long and so freakishly tall and athletic for a guy that size. It's just so hard to kind of project it and put him into a place where he's going to succeed the most. I mean, he had like 36-inch arms. It's crazy length. But he's too tall to play the edge, and he's too tall to play the edge and too tall to play linebacker. And it's like, where do you kind of put this guy? And the Broncos are kind of struggling with that. Now, with Sternad obviously going out and the Broncos need a next man up, this is why they're bringing in Mark Barron. But Justin Hollins being able to step away from the edge just a little bit, because they're trying to use him there as well, but to get him off ball and let him use that athleticism and try to get him running with some guys, I think he can keep up with tight ends. In fact, he's actually caught up with Noah Fant a couple times in practice, from what I understand, per Ryan Edwards at 850 KOA on Broncos Country Tonight. I actually talked about Justin Hollins being probably the better of the three guys, Joe Jones and Josie Jewell being the other two guys. But Justin Hollins is doing a pretty good job as far as coverage goes. Not going to be a starter. He's going to be a rotational kind of a guy. So it's very weird to see what the Broncos are going to do with him. So I don't know.
Fun fact for Justin Hollins, the first time he really saw the field, it was at off ball last year.
Yes, it was.
Unfortunately, it went poorly, and they ended up losing to the Jaguars, largely because of him. But that showed that exactly what he needed to work on. There was another comment here that I saw that I wanted to get to you. James did come in to correct you. Akeem Davis-Gaither was the first pick of round 4.
Oh,
and
you got me on that.
That's way, but I'm on a little bit later.
Right. That's right. Apologies for that one.
And then James Campbell also says athletically, Hollins and Floyd are similar as well. I think that is a big reason why they drafted Justin Hollins to kind of fill that role. I mean,
that Leonard Floyd role, the Leonard Floyd role from Chicago when Vic was over that.
And
way.
then
I can see that.
Could Malik Reed or Jeremiah Tauchu help an off-ball linebacker? No, because they're looking for somebody in coverage. If they're looking for somebody to kind of move off ball and help against the run, then yes. I mean, what they would do off ball would be very similar to what they would be asked to do off the edge. And Malik Reed, he actually did a little bit of that at Nevada, and it was one reason why it was thought for a while, and even the coaches at Denver last year kind of played with this, of having him kind of learn this hybrid role, but he just struggled in coverage so much for them to really keep that going with him. And then Jeremiah Tauchu, he's just the same thing. I mean, he's an athletic guy off the edge, can do well against the run inside, but I mean, he's not a guy that's going to be in coverage.
Yeah, I do want to get your opinions here. There's actually a couple of things that I want your opinions on really fast, just because I see the holes at the offensive tackle position with obviously Juwan James being the injury concern, Elijah Wilkinson, Demar Dotson obviously is here on a 1-year deal. We don't know the future of number 72. Obviously, the offensive tackle position is a huge need for the Broncos. This looks like it's going to be a pretty good offensive tackle class. However, on the outside of that, another big and very sneaky need, especially, and it's a topic of conversation for tonight, Justin Simmons and the contract that he could potentially get. Kareem Jackson potentially on the outside looking in for 2021 with the Broncos having an option out there. And that has to be James actually came in and says that option has to be exercised before the end of the 2021 season. Gave some stats in there as well as far as the money is concerned. But the third safety for this Broncos defense, and honestly an actual starting safety, what kind of draft options are the Broncos looking at? And also, give me your thoughts on Dylan Moses and Micah Parsons as well.
Well, right now it seems like they seem to have their number 3 safety, Trey Marshall. He's doing great in practice, which, I mean, I'm great to see. I mean, after I kind of was a little bit hard on him for his play last year because it wasn't that good. No, but I mean, he's just being smart out there. I mean, he's being in the right spot. He's doing what he needs to do. He's getting interceptions. He's making big plays. It's what you need for a number 3 safety. Yep. I mean, really, it's the number 2 safety. Kareem Jackson's going to move down and be that nickel, but whatever. What is it? Semantics. I mean, that's just what all we're getting to there. But he seems to be doing well. But anyways, going about the draft, there's actually a lot of good quality safeties in this. My favorite guy, he was a guy that I really touted this year before he decided to return to Florida State. He was a guy that I felt that he could definitely step in and be that perfect number 3 safety in Vic Fangio's defense. He's a guy that would be a perfect option if they do end up moving on from Justin Simmons to replace him. And that's Hamza Nasser-Eldin out of Florida State, as I mentioned. He does a little bit of everything very well. He can play in the box. It's not what he does best. He's perfect for a 2 high safety scheme, like Vic Fangio runs. He's smart. He reads the quarterback very well. He gets himself into position. A lot of the stuff that Justin Simmons did so well coming out of college, Hamza Nasser-Eldin does just as well. And then there's another big-time safety that I can't remember out of what college or anything like that, who would be another perfect fit in Vic Fangio's defense. Can't remember who it is. As for linebackers, obviously Dylan Moses, Micah Parsons, those are the top 2 guys. Micah Parsons, he's probably going to be a top 10 pick. And then Dylan Moses, depending on whatever happens with the SEC season this year. I mean, Alabama, they've been getting hit pretty hard with what's going on in the world, so we'll see what happens. But he needs a season. I mean, he ended up getting hurt last year, missed basically all the season. He's a guy who he does very well in coverage. I mean, it's just he's I keep saying this, but he's smart with it. He's not a supreme athlete, but he knows how to get himself into position. He has understanding of leverage and coverage. He understands the finer nuances, and he does a good job for it. I think he'd be a really good fit for it. I think he can play that Danny Trevathan role in this scheme, which is fine. That's what you need. If Alexander Johnson steps up, you need somebody to play that role. And with Justin Strnad missing this year, you can't really bet on him coming back. So we'll see what happens there. And then there's another linebacker, too, that I think that he has a chance. I think he's set to play this year. Real quick, let me go pull up.
Just quickly, really fast, I'm going to interrupt you really quick. Right. Miller707 coming in here and says, is there a chance Justin Strnad can come back late in the year, or is he 100% done for the year? Per Vic Fangio, he is done for the season. So there is no chance. It doesn't sound like they're going to bring him off of IR, so he is pretty well done.
With the injury he has, it's a possibility, but they just don't seem interested in doing it.
Right. And that's actually a better way of putting that. But what Vic said the other day was he was out for the year. Yeah. So, let's see here.
Ardarius Washington was the other safety. He's a little bit smaller.
Okay, yeah.
And then the other linebacker was Chad Surratt out of North Carolina. He's the guy that's a big riser. Expected to be a big riser. I'm terrible with conferences. So I can't even tell you what conference North Carolina plays in off the top of my head. I'd have to.
The ACC.
ACC. So what? They're one of the ones that are expected to play, right? ACC
they'll play this year.
Okay. So he'll have a chance to show it. He's the guy that I liked last year, but I'm glad he decided to return. He was a guy that definitely needed a lot of improvement. I think he has a chance to do that and show it this year. So we'll see what happens with him. He's a guy that I really do think he can rise up to be that first round pick, but he's just gotta got to show key improvements in certain areas. James, I see James touting Paris Ford. James, that's one player that I actually haven't had a chance to watch yet. So, I mean, go ahead and give me a quick breakdown in the chat. I'll put it up on the screen and everything and just give my thoughts about that. But yeah, it'll be limited, but again, I haven't watched him, so I can't speak too much about him.
It is really hard. Just a quick question before I do this. I want to do this tonight while I actually have an opportunity. I got it pulled up. How are you going about your scouting? Are you just going to continue watching that 2019 tape for what we have and just kind of take that? Or are you really going to weigh some 2020 grades going in here? Because not everyone's playing, and we're going to have to wait until spring to see a lot of these guys. Or we might not even be able to see a lot of them at all. They might wait until 2021. How are you going about that? Because it's going to really help me as well.
I have no idea how I'm going to go about it. It's something that I'm still figuring out. I have all my spreadsheets up and stuff like that to go and start trying to figure out all the grading system, all the guys that I need to watch. But the NCAA, of course, they had to throw another wrinkle, and seniors can come back to have the extra year of eligibility if they so choose. So that's a whole other thing that I have to keep an eye out for. Seniors that are deciding to return for that. But yeah, I really don't know. I think spring ball is terrible. I did do a video about that. Well, actually, I'm going to be doing a video this weekend about the impact of college teams either canceling their games or postponing them. But yeah, I really don't know yet. I mean, obviously, when I find out, I'll let you know. But it's something that, for me, the hardest part is how to find that balance, because some players that needed to show big improvement in 2019, they now don't have that chance. So how much of it do I bet on potential with their grade overall for me? But I can't go deviate too far based on what I've seen. Because guys in 2020, I mean, there is a little bit of potential, but there's a lot more to go off of. So it's just trying to figure out the balance of everything.
Right. That's fair. I'm just trying to figure this out. Larry Vaughn coming in says, I hope Vic's system can hold on. Let me move this really fast. I actually have something pulled up here. Let's see here. I hope Vic's system will set Barron up for success. Yeah, that's the biggest thing, is that you just got to kind of trust in Vic Fangio. Obviously, he likes what he sees. John Elway bringing him in. There's something to work with there, apparently, in Vic Fangio's eyes. I kind of said it, too. There is some athleticism to work with. Not the greatest athlete in the world. Obviously, not great in man coverage. We'll see what he can do in zone. A good tackler in the running game. Hits really hard. But it's just you really got to kind of trust in Vic on this one, because he's the guy that is well, I'm not sure if he's handpicked by Vic, but at least Vic is going to sign off on him. So that's one thing. Now, guys, last couple of minutes here. We'll see if we can't grab a couple more questions here in just a minute. But I do want to do this. Going back to what you and I talked about a few weeks ago and trying to break down some coverage stuff. Obviously, we're talking about Justin Simmons tonight as well. So I want to break down a little bit what a quarters defense is. A quarters defense is a cover 4 unit, okay? Now, I have a very cool graphic, and this is actually I stole it from Inside the Pylon, and they do great work over there, InsideThePylon.com. Check out some of their stuff. They actually have a football dictionary, and you learn a lot of really cool terms, learn a lot about coverage schemes and stuff like that. I stole this just because it was a really easy one to use. Let me pull this up here really fast. Now, here it is. Maybe. There we go. So, in a cover 4 or a quarters defense, you can actually see this. Go, come back and check this out on YouTube if you get a chance after the fact. You're not listening right now or not live. Come back, check this out on YouTube, and you can see what I'm talking about here. In a cover 4 defense, you obviously see the red zones. Okay, so you have. Obviously, your cornerbacks are going to drop into zones on the outside. Your safeties are going to drop back in the middle. You're going to split the field into 4 equal quarters. Now, that is not exactly how this all completely works. And you'll see here, these white lines are your responsibilities, okay? So the linebacker has responsibilities for your inside receiver, and so does your safeties, okay? So your linebacker has to work off of this inside receiver, and he has to be able to drop back into depth and then also be able to move out and work his way out into the flat area, okay? So on both sides, any inside receiver, this is really easy because you have a 2x2 set, 2 wide receivers on each side. So you're going to see this linebacker. He has to carry this wide receiver on the inside to depth and then work to the flats, okay? So that's the first responsibility, and this is why it's so hard for linebackers to play in this quarters defense, this Vic Fangio cover 4 match quarters defense, okay? Now, where this gets even more tricky is where the pass off to the safeties actually occurs. So your safety here has to pass off from the linebacker and then understand that he has one of 2 responsibilities. So your safeties dictate the coverage based on the route stem of your inside receiver. So your route stem meaning how does your receiver release off the line of scrimmage, okay? So anything breaking vertical, once it gets to about 10 to 12 yards off the line of scrimmage, if it doesn't break off before that, the safety has deep coverage responsibility in the middle quarter of the field, okay? So he's going to have to man up and run and carry that guy. If that route on the inside breaks off before that or breaks to the outside, the safety turns it into, instead of a cover 4 where he has a deep quarter of the field, it turns into a deep half of the field. So it turns into a cover 2 look, 2 halves of the field, okay? So anything breaking to the outside before 10 yards, the safety drops his responsibility and then goes to help the cornerback on the outside, okay? Now, for your cornerbacks, your outside cornerbacks have to play with outside leverage, meaning they have to funnel everything back to where their safety help could be potentially playing on the inside, okay? So they're going to line up with their body shaded to the outside with their back to the sideline, okay? They're going to funnel everything back towards the middle of the field, right? Now, anything on the outside, and they have this outside corner or this outside quarter of the field, okay? Anything that breaks to the outside of the field, breaks towards the sideline, their responsibility is to, first off, appreciate the help they get over the top, but anything that breaks on the outside, attack aggressively. And this is where Vic Fangio really really requires a cornerback that has the ability to click and close on the outside. Anything that, like say an out route or a deep comeback route, something that breaks to the sideline, that cornerback has to be able to drop back, get a lot of depth, and then put his foot in the ground and drive vertically on the football. This is where cornerbacks get a lot of interceptions in Vic Fangio's defense, okay? Attack aggressively on any outside breaking route. Now, the safeties, again, they have this same responsibility as the linebackers. You have to watch this inside receiver. And if they don't have a vertical route stem from their inside receiver, they have over the top. This is where your bracket coverage comes in, okay? Your outside cornerback is going to break on anything outside and drive vertically on the football, and your free safety is going, or your safety position on either side is going to work over the top, and he cannot be beat in the deep side. Now, this defense is very vulnerable to quick shots across the middle of the field because your linebackers have a long ways to move. And if they can't break out to the outside, they're going to get crossed. If they can't drop and then move to the flats, they're going to get crossed their face, okay? So wide receiver on a crossing route, slant routes, these are very easy shots to take in this kind of a defense. It's also very vulnerable in the deep middle of the field, especially if you have a dual threat, deep threat in the middle of the field. So both safeties have to work vertically. So you have to be able to communicate and pass off that kind of coverage dictation. It's a very interesting way of going about playing defense. It's so very versatile, and it's very hard to kind of create this communication. And that's why it's so hard and so difficult for safeties to be able to play in Vic Fangio's scheme. It's so hard and so difficult for linebackers to be able to play in Vic Fangio's defensive scheme, because those are the primary aspects of the coverage scheme in and of itself. They have to be able to communicate where their drops are at, who's passing off to who. They have to key correctly on what is breaking to the outside, what is coming back to the inside, and also be able to pass off whatever kind of responsibility that you have between those four players. It's so fun to be able to think about this. I learned so much listening to Cody Alexander talk on a podcast and just doing my own research. But this is it's an amazing defense to work, and it does a very good job in limiting like really deep shots, because but deep shots down the middle is the way that you're going to beat it because of the lack of communication.
Yeah, that's really great stuff, Lance. And man, I really wish we could have gotten the full breakdown of coverages and stuff like that. It would have been so interesting to hear about, but we are running a little bit long, And there are a few more comments I want to get to real quick. Casey Martin came in and said, "This is great. Thank you, Lance and Eric. Not enough X's and O's in other sites." Casey, every so often we do a podcast that's just focused on that. It's just focused on the X's and O's. We've done offensive line. I think we've done defensive line. We've done breaking down how to do scouting reports. We do all sorts of stuff like that on it. James Campbell said, when I asked about Ford, he said, "Ford isn't the biggest. 6 foot, 190 pounds, but he has a good motor and hits very hard. Range is good. He makes plays on the ball. For a true sophomore, he trusts his eyes, does his best work closer to the line of scrimmage." But really want to see what he could do in the ACC season to really develop more as a more complete safety prospect. I like his traits, though. That sounds very interesting. I would love to. I got to get down and dig into him because I haven't watched him, but he definitely sounds like a safety that I would like. And then Andy Rock Lovato asked the question earlier. I got to go back and find it real quick. There it is. James has it. He asks, "So if I'm a player," and I'm going to remove this. There he is. "So if I'm a player in the NFL and I'm happy with my pay, does the team have to pay me more because another player on another team is getting paid way more than me in the same position? Could I decline the money, or does the team have to pay me because another team overpaid the position? Thanks. Love you guys." Really, it's up to you. It's up to the players and their agents and stuff like that. A lot of times, obviously, players always go for more money. But yeah, there's been plenty of players who've taken less just to stay with the team. Chris Harris is a famous one for it. I mean, we saw with the Denver Broncos, he took far less than market value to stick around to sign an extension with them. And then last year, it became an issue that he did. He wanted more money, and it finally came to be. And he still didn't get as much as he wanted to, or as he wanted. But yeah, I mean, it really is. It's up to the player. It's up to the agents. But again, most of the time, players they want as much money as they can get. But we do see them decline more and take less. There was another one. He was I'm trying to remember who it was, but he was famous. Really, I mean, he's no longer in the NFL, but he went around to like 5 or 6 different teams during his career, and he never took the biggest deal. But it was never the smallest either. But he always accepted, because he wanted to compete. He always accepted them to compete, and that's the biggest thing. As well with a lot of players, is they look for players that, or they want to go to teams that they can compete with. So that plays a factor into it as well. So just a little bit of everything, but no, you don't have to ask for money. It just most often happens that way.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, there is some guys that have holdout situations. Obviously, we saw it with Melvin Gordon last year in Los Angeles, Dalvin Cook as well, holding out for more money because somebody else got paid more than me. I think my worth, I think I have higher value than what I'm getting paid right now. Stuff like that. It's a tricky. It's really just it depends on the player, and we'll see what happens with Justin Simmons here. But I personally think that he's going to go out and he's going to collect that bag, and he's going to come and get a lot of money. Based on what you see, I mean, it would be an insult if the Broncos offered anything less than what Budda Baker just got paid. I wouldn't say it'd be an insult if he got offered less than what Eddie Jackson got paid, just because Eddie Jackson's fantastic. But with Budda Baker being the highest paid safety, that jumps everybody up, like all the way across the board. So, but anyways, guys, that's going to do it for us. Thank you all for watching the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Thank you all for the kind words as well on the chat about the breakdown. I went a little bit faster than I wanted to, but I wanted to give you at least a good breakdown of what Vic Fangio's defense is. But anyways, thank you guys all for watching the Dove Valley Deep Divers. You guys can follow us on Twitter at DVDD_pod. It's the easiest way to keep in touch with what's going on with the Dove Valley Deep Divers. You can follow me at Sanderson MHH, and for Eric at Erick Trickel. Notice the CK in Eric and the EL in Trickel. Also, while you guys are at it, follow at Mile High Huddle for breaking news and analysis, film breakdowns, and opinion articles on your Denver Broncos. It's also the easiest way to keep in touch with what's going on with the entire Huddle Up Podcast Network, including the Huddle Up Podcast, the Building the Broncos podcast, and Mile High Insiders. If you guys are financially able to do so, head on over to huddleuppod.com. That's the merch tent. That's where you guys can get your hats, get your t-shirts, get yourself a face mask, a hoodie, a coffee cup. There's a bunch of great stuff from everything Mile High Huddle, including all of the Mile High Huddle podcast as well. If you guys are not financially able to do so, the 3 easiest things you guys can do, and actually there's a 4th one here, but the 3 easiest things you guys can do is subscribe wherever you guys are watching this, whether it's on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Periscope, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you guys get your podcast. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle. Like every video you guys see, and if you love it, share it out to like-minded Broncos fans across the entire country, because we are growing exponentially. And what we're doing here with the Huddle Up Podcast Network is trying to reach as many Broncos fans worldwide as we possibly can. And the last thing you guys can do is, if you're not want to be on YouTube and stuff like that, head on over to Facebook, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. Click the support button. Be like Pobby here, Steve Griffith, Chris Hernandez, Roger, Jeff as well. Help support the show in any way that support the show and also the website in any way that you guys can. Those are just the easiest ways to be able to do so. Now, Eric, before we get out of here, hashtag, are there any last words?
Biggest thing is just be safe. I know there's a lot of wildfires going on in Colorado right now. I have family that lives in Grand Junction, and there's the big fire going on here. So stay safe, you guys. If you guys are told to evacuate, please get out of there. Get your stuff and go. And, I mean, just anywhere. Just stay safe. We hope you guys are back next week and join us for another riveting conversation with Lance and I, and probably hear some good Nick jokes. Yeah.
I'm about it. Nick jokes are always fun. All right, well, guys, that's going to do it for us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. For Erick Trickel, I am Lance Sanderson. Y'all stay safe and take care and have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you guys next week.
You've been listening to the Huddle Up Podcast. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.